Tell me what the following quote means to you. A person is a person, no matter how small.
So that quote reminds me of this experience where I really put all of the connections together about the work that I do. It happened when I was flying overseas. I had a trip to actually go to Belgium. I was working with an amazing team over there. They were going to test out the core measures. And there was lots of debacle with the flight. There was weather, all this craziness. And so we had to land in Dulles and get rebooked and all this crazy, frustrating stuff. So I just go give them the stuff. They give me stuff back. I'm like, okay, fine. And I start getting on the plane because they called my section or something. And historically, I go on a plane and I turn right. That's just what I do. You go on the plane and you turn right. So I start to go on the plane and turn right, and the woman at the door says, oh no, you're over here. And that was left. And I'd never turned to left in my whole entire life to get on a plane. And so turning left was like a whole new world, all right? It was first class. It was insane. It was crazy. And I was like a total, like, I was a little shell-shocked because I didn't know what to do. Everything was like weirdly positioned and stuff. The seats were sideways and stuff. So the woman helped me out, got me all settled in, hands me my Bose headsets, and a little TV comes up and says, you can watch any movie in the world. And that movie was on the menu. Horton Hears a Who was on the menu. And I thought, I love Dr. Seuss, so I have to watch this movie. And I know the story, I know how it all ends, but I just had to watch it. And so I'm watching the movie, and as it goes and unfolds, right, Horton says, a person is a person, no matter how small. And I had this like ridiculous epiphany about the meaning of that in the context of the work that I do. That, the people that we take care of in the neonatal intensive care unit, they're people. They're really, really small, but they're people. But we often don't treat them like people, right? We treat them like little things that we have to do stuff to save their lives, obviously important, but there was something missing in my historical understanding of what these little individuals were. And it just all kind of came together with that quote and that connection. And I've used that a lot now in the presentations that I use. And I actually was awarded the Horton Award for recognizing, the humanitarian dimensions of these little people as a result of my earlier work around the core measures. So that phrase has a real special meaning in my heart. So.
How does it feel when you're speaking or you're giving a lecture and you see that one person in the audience and you just know that you're connecting with that person? And your message is going to make a huge impact on what they do moving forward.
I always approach a speaking gig. I try and set an intention, to be inspiring, and that, anybody can read the stuff. I've curated all this knowledge, and it's not privy to me, right? It's available. People just need to look for it. But I feel like it's how I deliver it that is kind of a make or break moment to touch somebody else's soul in the room. And I want to touch everybody's soul, right? But I don't want to get greedy either, And even one person who gets the message is like, job well done, Maya. And I know I see myself sometimes, I get carried away. I get really passionate about the material because it is so insanely important. And when you see somebody out there who gets it, it's just like, just keep feeding me then, because I could talk forever now because I've got you and you get it and you know how important this is, and I know you're going to turn around and you're going to share this with 2 friends who are going to share it with 2 more friends and who are going to just keep spreading the word that we have such an amazing opportunity and responsibility to change the current paradigm in the NICU. And it has to become an always event, to always be mindful of others and to always practice with this framework of trauma-informed care, because they are traumatized. And it doesn't matter what we think about it, it's their experience that really defines what it is, you know?
When I hear you speak, I oftentimes hear you reference a woman named Barbara. Tell everybody who this is.
So Barbara is a fictional person who lives everywhere. I mean, she's in the NICU, she's in the PICU, she's everywhere. She's probably in business as well. But Barbara is that person who knows everything. She's the expert, and she's also the bully. She's the person that is always going to say no. She's always going to push back. She's always going to make you feel inferior. She's got a little tribe of princesses or princes that flutter around her to keep her happy. Because if you keep Barbara happy, you're going to have a good day. And so that's kind of who Barbara is. Everybody knows her. When you get accultured into a healthcare environment, school does not prepare you for that, right? I mean, you learn all this stuff about caring and the science of caring and compassion and all this kind of stuff in a sterile environment that has nothing to do with the real world. Then you get unleashed into this environment that has all of that. It has ego, it has my way or the highway, it has the crusty critters, you know, the people, I've been doing it this way for 30 years, I'm not going to change. It has the bullies, it has the resistors, it has, you know, the novices who they're going to be tarnished within 30 days. You just know it's going to happen. And nobody prepares you for that. So it's kind of like, I kind of came to my understanding of this by baptism of fire. You know, I've worked with Barbara. I've worked with, you know, the doctor who, you know, it's all about him. And I think that there are people that choose neonatology as a path because the patients are nonverbal, or pre-verbal, I should say. They're pre-verbal. They can't fight back. The parents are terrified, and they don't know what they don't know. So they're not going to buck the system because they're afraid that if they say something, maybe something bad will happen to their baby. And I know that sounds horrible to say, but that's what it is. And so if you are not tuned into that reality, you're going to end up being an accomplice to it. You know, you're going to allow it to continue because everyone's afraid to be the one that says, this is not acceptable. And it goes even beyond the NICU because the infrastructure of hospitals too. So if you do encounter a bully and you think you're following the chain of command and, you know, reporting it to their immediate supervisor who then reports it to HR and blah, 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 there's no guarantee that anything will get better. And that can be really disheartening. And so understanding that reality and talking about it and exposing it, it's like the skeletons in the closet, and none of the folks in there want anybody outside to know that that's happening. It's not everywhere, right? But there are pockets of it. And so if you're not paying attention to that, you could be an accomplice. So that's why I really try and call it out in the work that I do, because calling it out lets everybody put their guard down. And you hear it, right? When I mentioned the Barbara, you hear that nervous laughter in the room because she's everywhere. She's everywhere. And she's a he too. I mean, it's just, you know, my default name, you know? But, and by talking about it, right, it's bringing to light the elephant on the table. And let's realize that the work that I'm inviting you to do and to be part of this movement to transform the patient experience of care, if you're not aware of the elephant, you're not going to be successful. You need to see the elephant. You need to figure out, you know, employ those habits of the improvers. What are those influencing strategies that you can use to kind of work the system until the system is really ready and ripe for change? I'm hoping it happens in my lifetime, but that's why it's really important to know that that stuff is in there.
Tell me why all of this is important. Why is your message, your evolution, your learning, why is sharing this with people all over the world, why is this important to you?
I wish I could kind of find one explanation for this, but when you asked me that question, this story popped up into my head, so I feel like the Spirit is moving me. I must share. So when I was a nurse at the Brigham, I loved to do triage. The role of triage was you got to go to all the deliveries. And usually the deliveries were high risk, but not always like super scary high risk, you know, like because it was a teaching hospital, you know, they wanted to have lots of experiences for, you know, the physician team and stuff like that to learn what it is to be at a delivery and support a baby through the transition. But I loved it because I loved being there at somebody's birthday. And so I went down to the delivery, and it was low high risk, which probably sounds ridiculous, but that was how it was categorized. So I didn't need to have a physician with me. And so I go down, and it was a vaginal delivery. And so you never know when the exact moment of birth is going to happen. So oftentimes they call you earlier than you really need to be there. Well, I actually love getting called earlier because I get to share this like amazing event in a family's life that's sacred, you know, that nobody else gets to be there, you know, unless you're part of the family. And so I come in, you know, and try and be really cool and unobtrusive, go over to the warming table, which is, you know, kind of my station where I just stay and wait for the baby to be born, and then they bring the baby over. But I'm there, and you know, everybody's encouraging the mom to push, and you know, just those words of love, and you're just so amazing, and all that kind of stuff. And then the clinical instructions and stuff. And I found myself getting all caught up in it. And so in a quiet voice, because I knew I must have seemed like I was a crazy person, I was like at the warming table going, push, push. And then the baby comes out, there's tears everywhere, I'm crying. I'm not even related to these people. They bring the baby over to me. I do the real quick, you know, drying off of the baby and wrap her up and bring her right over to the mom and dad. And to be that close to that kind of a moment in somebody's life, to see the expression on the mother's face, you know, and the dad and everything, it was just, it was amazing. But then I had to bring the baby up to the NICU because I think the poor little thing needed a septic workup or something. And so I'm coming up, and I get joy tears all over me, you know, and I come into the hall, and as I'm moving the baby down the hall, some of my colleagues are seeing me, and I'm clearly emoting, and they look at me and look at each other and go, who put her on triage? What the heck is this all about? Kind of like, you know, she's just this sloppy emotional mess. And I mean, this happened a long time ago, and I still remember how those words made me feel. And they made me feel a little bit mad at them, and that I never wanted to not feel this way about the work that I do, because it's a gift to be there, you know, during such a sacred event.
Magical.
Yeah, I was going to say the word magical, but I thought, is that too much magic? You know, and super for real. And I think that was kind of like the beginning of like a search, you know, a journey to try and find the thing that was going to really make me really aligned with my purpose. I mean, being a bedside nurse is cool. Then I was a nurse practitioner, and that was super cool. And I got really good at the technical proficiencies and stuff, which is a nice adrenaline rush. But at the end of the day, I wanted more. I wanted to be really part of that human experience in the setting of that crisis. And it wasn't an option where I was at the time. So I just feel like I kind of started going on a journey for it. And I feel like I found it.